Ladies and gentlemen, they didn't notice when you broke. They won't notice while you build, but they will notice when you return, silent, different, and unbothered. You see, the moment you stop chasing applause and turn inward, you begin a revolution, a quiet, subtle rebellion against the noise of the world. People won't see it at first. They'll wonder where you've gone. But what they don't realize is, while they were busy watching each other, you stepped away and built something unshakable within yourself. You were never meant to be a performer in someone else's circus. But for most of your life you played the role, smiling when you wanted to scream, nodding when you wanted to walk away, living to be seen, not to be whole. And that, right there, is the trap. Focusing on yourself is not selfish, it is sacred. It is the art of refusing to be defined by people who barely know themselves. It is turning your back on noise and facing your truth, no matter how uncomfortable it feels. When you stop explaining your plans, stop justifying your growth, stop watering dead plants, something unexpected happens. You shock them. They expect your silence to mean defeat, but it is preparation. They expect your absence to mean weakness, but it is rebirth. When you begin to focus inward, truly inward, you start noticing how much energy you are wasting. You begin to reclaim it, piece by piece, thought by thought, breath by breath. And as that energy returns to you, it transforms. It doesn't ask for recognition, it becomes recognition. Your evolution will terrify those who only knew the version of you that needed them. They'll try to pull you back through guilt, through silence, through shame. But the more you focus on you, the more their noise sounds like echoes from a past life you no longer belong to. Understand this. You owe no explanations, no clarifications, no proof. Your peace is the loudest statement. Your growth is the ultimate clapback. Your stillness is your strength. This world wants chaos. It feeds on reaction. But the moment you stop reacting, you gain control. Not of the world, but of yourself. And when you control yourself, you're unshakable. That's when you become a mirror, reflecting others' fears, not absorbing them. So focus on your breath, on your craft, on your truth. Disappear if you must. Because when you return, you won't need to shock them with words. Your presence will say it all. Most people walk through life shackled by an invisible chain. The need to be seen, liked, acknowledged. They dress for others, speak for others, post for others, succeed for others. And what they don't realize is that every step they take trying to impress the world is a step further from their true self. This is the illusion of validation. It feels like freedom, like success, like significance. But in truth, it's the most subtle kind of imprisonment. The moment you start living for approval, you start dying to yourself. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, your instincts get replaced by the expectations of others. Your dreams morph into performances. Your silence becomes anxiety. Your presence becomes a strategy. You're no longer moving from authenticity, but from anticipation, constantly wondering how others will receive you, judge you, label you. And here's the tragedy. The approval you chase is as fragile as the people who give it. One moment they lift you up, the next they tear you down. One wrong word, one misunderstood gesture, and you're no longer the version of yourself they liked. Suddenly you're too much, or not enough. And what do you do then? You shapeshift. Again and again, until the mirror doesn't recognize you, until your inner voice is drowned out by the noise of rehearsed personas. This is not life. This is performance, a continuous audition for a role that keeps changing, for an audience that keeps shrinking. But here's the deeper truth most never dare to explore. What if validation itself is the trap? What if the need to be liked is the very thing keeping you from being loved? Genuinely, deeply, unconditionally. Because real love, real connection, doesn't come from performing. It comes from being. And you cannot be if you are always adjusting. Validation promises acceptance, but only gives you dependence. It offers praise, but only when you conform. And every time you conform, you abandon a piece of yourself at the altar of approval. What's the alternative? It's radical, but it's simple. Choose yourself. Not the version you think others will admire, not the version that makes people comfortable, the raw version, the honest version, the version that speaks its truth even when it's not popular. That version doesn't seek validation because it already knows its worth. And yes, that choice is scary. The applause may stop, the likes may fade, the circle may shrink, but what remains is something priceless. Freedom from the exhausting game of pretending, freedom to walk away without explaining, freedom to succeed quietly, heal privately, evolve unapologetically, scepter, adjacent, hierarchical. When you stop living for others, something extraordinary happens. The world stops having power over you. You are no longer controlled by compliments or crushed by criticism. You become whole. And when you become whole, you start attracting people and experiences that align with your truth, not your performance. The irony is that when you no longer seek to impress, you begin to inspire, not by trying, but by being. Your authenticity becomes magnetic. Your peace becomes rare. Your focus becomes powerful. And that's when you shock them. Not with noise, but with your presence. Not with drama, but with your discipline. Not with arrogance, but with your unbothered energy. They'll wonder how you did it. How you went silent and came back stronger. How you stopped explaining and started evolving. They won't understand it because they're still playing the game you walked away from. But that's not your concern anymore. Because once you see the illusion of validation for what it is, a cage made of compliments, you can't go back. You don't want to. You've tasted something better, something real, yourself. There is a strange kind of power in pulling your energy inward. In a world obsessed with expression, reaction, noise, and visibility, silence is seen as weakness. Absence is misread as failure. But the truth is, the most powerful transformations happen quietly. Not in front of a crowd, not on a stage, not under a spotlight, but behind closed doors, in the unseen space where you choose to retreat, reflect, and rebuild. Withdrawal isn't running away. It's not defeat. It's not isolation for the sake of hiding. It's an intentional pause, a sacred redirection, a moment when you decide that your energy is no longer up for public consumption, that you are no longer performing for people who don't understand your journey. It is choosing solitude over noise, depth over surface, and self-respect over constant availability. When you begin to pull back, you feel it first as discomfort. The mind panics. You want to reach out, to explain, to reassure others of your presence. You want to maintain connections, to keep up appearances. But if you can hold still long enough past the anxiety and past the fear, something profound starts to occur. Clarity. Clarity arrives only when the noise fades, and noise cannot fade unless you step away from it. The world constantly pulls your attention outward, scrolling, comparing, explaining, reacting. It convinces you that every moment must be filled with input or output, that your value lies in how visible and loud you are. But when you pull your energy inward, you reclaim your attention. You realize how much of your life has been shaped by distraction, and how little of it was truly your own. In that withdrawal, you begin to hear your real thoughts, not the ones influenced by trends, people, or expectations, but the ones rooted deep within. The voice that's often drowned out in the chaos. That voice doesn't need to be validated. It doesn't speak for applause. It speaks for alignment. And when you start listening, your direction becomes clear, not because someone pointed the way, but because you remembered it yourself. There is something about not explaining yourself that terrifies the world. People expect access to your energy. They expect updates, performances, justifications. And when you go silent, they assume something's wrong. But what they don't realize is that silence can be the most conscious, confident act of all, because it takes immense strength to not explain yourself, to trust your own timing, to step back, not because you're lost, but because you're getting ready to rise again with clarity and precision. Because this internal withdrawal, this sacred silence, it changes the way you show up in life. You no longer feel the need to overgive, overshare, or overprove. You stop leaking energy into conversations that go nowhere, into people. We can serve that energy. Redirect it and channel it into something meaningful, your own becoming. Instead, you can serve that energy. Redirect it. Channel it into something meaningful, your own becoming. When you return from that inward focus, you shock people. Not with noise, but with presence. Not with stories, but with stillness. Your silence speaks volumes. It says, I no longer seek validation, I'm found direction. It says, I've seen the chaos, and I've chosen peace. It says, I am not here to convince you, impress you, or please you. I am here to be. People won't understand it. They'll try to interpret your withdrawal through their limited lens. They'll assume you're bitter, broken, or distant. Let them. Because their confusion is not your burden. Your focus is no longer on managing others' perceptions. It's on mastering your own presence. And here's the truth. Not everyone deserves access to the current version of you. Not everyone can meet you at your new frequency. That's okay. The silence you embraced has purified your circle. It has protected your growth. And it has returned you to yourself. If you feel the call to pull back, answer it. Let the world run ahead for a while. Let it scream, perform, and chase. You're not falling behind. You're rising from within, quietly, intentionally, powerfully. Let your silence be your strength. Let your withdrawal be your wisdom. Let your stillness shake the ground they stand on. Focusing on yourself is not just an act of self-care. It's an act of rebellion. In a world designed to keep your attention scattered, your focus is power, and when you reclaim that power and turn it inward, you're no longer cooperating with a system that profits from your distraction. Look around. Everything is fighting for your attention. Social media feeds, breaking news, advertisements, opinions, expectations. From the moment you wake up, you're bombarded with reasons to look outward, to compare, to react, to perform. You're taught that your value is based on how much attention you receive, how many people notice you, approve of you, follow you. So, naturally, you begin to chase it. You chase visibility, you chase engagement, you chase acceptance. And while you're busy chasing all these things, you slowly forget what you want, what matters to you, what your inner voice is trying to say. That voice becomes quieter, not because it has nothing to say, but because it can't be heard over the noise you've invited in. Distraction becomes the norm, and focus feels unnatural. But the moment you stop, the moment you intentionally say no more, and redirect your energy inward, something begins to shift. You realize how rare true focus is. You realize how difficult it is to sit with your own thoughts without reaching for a screen, without needing an escape. You begin to notice how much of your time has been dictated by urgency that wasn't even your own. Focusing on yourself means refusing to participate in the race to nowhere. It means stepping back from the pressure to constantly update, explain, and compete. It's turning off the noise and listening. It's turning the herd to a prison, to understand, really listening to your own rhythm, your own needs, your own direction. And when you start doing that, when you start living by your own compass, you become unpredictable, to a world that expects you to follow its script. That unpredictability is what shocks them. You're no longer posting to be seen. You're building silently. You're no longer responding to every insult or misunderstanding. You're conserving your energy. You're no longer interested in surface-level validation. You're cultivating depth. And in a society that expects your compliance, that expects your constant engagement, that kind of internal focus is rebellion. They'll say you've changed, and they're right. They'll say you're distant, but you've just become selective. They'll say you're cold, but you've just stopped pouring into what doesn't nourish you. The more you focus on yourself, the more you realize how little of the outside world actually matters. Most of what you thought you needed, the praise, the acceptance, the approval, was just noise. And as you quiet that noise, you begin to see clearly, you begin to act with intention, you begin to move differently. And that movement, that energy, will unsettle those who are comfortable with your distractions. They were fine with you when you were lost in the same loops, complaining, comparing, performing. But now that you've chosen a different path, now that you've stopped explaining and started evolving, your silence becomes threatening. Not because you've attacked them, but because you've outgrown the version of yourself they were comfortable with. You're no longer feeding the system with your attention. You're feeding your mind with clarity, your body with rest, your soul with direction. You're not reacting. You're observing. Not rushing. You're reflecting. Not proving. You're becoming. And this is where true change begins. Not when the world claps for you, but when you no longer need the clapping, when you no longer crave the noise, when you've finally found peace in your own presence. Focus on yourself. Not to prove anything, but because you owe yourself that much. Let them misunderstand. Let them speculate. Let them wait for explanations that will never come. Your energy is no longer up for public debate. It is now your sacred investment. In this chaotic world, focus is your quiet rebellion. And the shock? That's just the sound of you finally becoming who you were always meant to be. The world has conditioned you to believe that transformation must be loud, that to evolve you must announce it, display it, prove it, but real change, the kind that actually alters the course of your life, doesn't happen in the spotlight. It happens in silence, in solitude, in the places where no one is watching. That's where you master yourself. Mastery is not performance. It isn't a highlight reel curated for applause. It's discipline. It's patience. It's showing up when no one is clapping, when no one is looking, when no one even believes in you. That's the space where transformation is born. Not in proving others wrong, but in becoming so deeply aligned with yourself that external validation becomes irrelevant. You see, when you stop trying to be impressive and start trying to be real, you switch directions. You stop climbing ladders that were never meant for you. You stop living to outperform others and start living to outgrow yourself. The journey inward isn't glamorous. There are no spotlights, no followers, no instant gratification. There is only you, your thoughts, your habits, your weaknesses and your discipline. And that's where the work begins. Self-mastery is waking up early when your body begs for more sleep, not to post about it, but to reclaim your time. It's choosing the difficult path, the one with no immediate reward, because you know it aligns with your purpose. It's resisting the impulse to react to every insult or invitation to drama, not because you're weak, but because you've built strength in restraint. You've built wisdom in stillness. People will never understand this kind of transformation because they're too used to the noise. They think growth is about shouting louder, posting more, gaining attention. But the ones who truly evolve understand something deeper. Noise fades. Applause dies down. Attention shifts. But who you become in silence, that lasts. And what's powerful about mastering yourself in private is this: no one can take it from you, because it was never built on anyone's opinion in the first place. It wasn't handed to you. It wasn't voted on. It was earned in sweat, in effort, in reflection. That kind of growth is unshakable, because it doesn't rely on anyone but you. You stop needing to explain yourself. You stop over-explaining your goals, your silence, your decisions. You just do the work. You become the work. And the results, they speak eventually. But by then, you don't even care about the reaction. You're already somewhere deeper, somewhere higher, somewhere freer. This is why real transformation shocks people, because you didn't warn them, you didn't advertise it, you just went silent and changed. And when you reappear, they don't recognize you, not because you tried to be someone else, but because you finally became who you always were underneath the noise. The truth is, no one is coming to save you. No one is going to remind you daily to stay disciplined, focused, aligned. That is your responsibility. And when you accept that, when you stop outsourcing your motivation and start owning your momentum, you begin to move differently. You begin to choose long-term over temporary, depth over popularity, peace over drama. And this choice, made over and over again in private, is what builds a foundation no one else sees, but everyone will eventually feel. Stop worrying about being seen. Start focusing on being solid. Stop performing. Start preparing. Start chasing the crowd. Start confronting the parts of you that need to be refined. Because when the applause stops, and it always will, what remains is your relationship with yourself. That's what matters. Let others talk. Let others showcase. Let them measure success in likes and shares. You measure it in integrity, in inner calm, in consistency. That's real mastery. Not what you show, but what you carry in silence. And one day, without warning, they'll see you again. Different, stronger, calmer. Not because you shouted louder, but because you did the work when no one was listening. And that's when they'll realize you never needed the spotlight to shine. You became the light, silently, patiently, powerfully. Outgrowing people, environments, and mindsets is not about proving your superiority. It's about evolving beyond what no longer serves your peace, your growth, and your truth. So many waste their energy trying to outshine others, to win petty comparisons, to dominate in circles that have already expired. But real power is quiet. It's internal. It's in choosing evolution over validation. It's in walking away, not to make a scene, but to protect your becoming. You were never meant to stay in the same place, think the same way, or surround yourself with the same energy forever. Growth demands change, and change demands the courage to let go. But letting go doesn't mean bitterness. It doesn't mean arrogance. It simply means clarity. You've outgrown the conversations that drain you, the habits that delay you, the people who misunderstand your silence and mistake your peace for weakness. In every stage of your life, there are versions of yourself you had to be to survive, to belong, to feel accepted. But now, you're no longer surviving. You're awakening. And that awakening comes with discomfort. You begin to see through facades. You begin to recognize forced smiles and shallow relationships. You start to crave solitude more than socializing, depth more than noise, purpose more than popularity. This is the quiet stage of growth, where you're not trying to impress anyone. You're not announcing your next move. You're simply becoming. And that becoming doesn't need permission. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't need a spotlight. Because it's not about being better than others. It's about being better than who you used to be. The world teaches you to compete, to climb, to prove. But that's just noise. That's ego looking for reassurance. And the truth is, nothing you build from ego ever lasts. It's unstable, shaky, hungry for constant attention. But when you build from self-awareness, from discipline, from inner peace, you don't need to outperform anyone. You just keep growing until the old version of you becomes unrecognizable. Outgrowing is a natural process, but people often resist it. Why? Because comfort feels like safety. Familiarity feels like love. But not everything you're used to is meant to stay. Some relationships are only meant to teach you not to travel with you. Some habits served a version of you that no longer exists. And you honor your growth by releasing them without resentment. And the defense mechanism which sustains us is don't waste energy trying to prove you've changed. Just change. Don't argue to be understood. Just keep evolving until your presence speaks louder than your words ever could. The ones who are meant to stay will adjust. The ones who aren't will fall away. Either way, you win. because growth always reveals who's aligned with your truth and who's attached to your past. There will be moments where you feel guilty for growing, for choosing silence over chatter, boundaries over people-pleasing, discipline over distraction. But that guilt is temporary. The peace that follows it is lasting. When you stop trying to outshine others and simply outgrow who you were, everything changes. You attract different energy. You make better decisions. You stop settling for anything that doesn't feel like alignment. And yes, some will misunderstand. They'll call you distant, arrogant, unapproachable. Let them. Their interpretation is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to keep evolving, to keep choosing the path that brings you closer to yourself. And that path, more often than not, is quiet, it's lonely, but it's worth it. Because in the end, it's not about being liked. It's about being free. Free from the need to prove, to impress, to stay in places you've outgrown, just to keep others comfortable. Your light isn't meant to blind anyone. It's meant to guide you home to yourself. Walk away when your soul says it's time. Say no when your peace is at risk. Step back when the energy feels forced. You're not here to compete, you're here to grow. And when you do it authentically, quietly, with intention, there's no need to shine. You become the light. There is a strange, almost unsettling power that comes when you focus so deeply on yourself that you become unrecognizable to those who once thought they knew you. They can't place it at first. It's not something you said or did, but something in your presence has shifted. You're no longer seeking approval. You're no longer participating in the performance. You're no longer playing the role they assigned to you. You've stepped out of the frame they tried to keep you in. And that change doesn't go unnoticed. It shocks them. The truth is, people build mental versions of you based on who you used to be, not who you really are. They remember the you who apologized too much, explained too often, gave too freely. They remember the version of you who tolerated disrespect, who laughed when it wasn't funny, who stayed quiet to keep the peace. That version made others comfortable. That version kept the illusion intact. But once you begin to focus on yourself, that version starts to dissolve. Slowly at first, then completely. And when you stop engaging in old patterns, people don't know how to respond. You no longer react to their provocations. You don't explain your silence. You don't participate in the same emotional chaos they thrive on. You've changed the rhythm, and they can't dance to it anymore. That unsettles them, because your silence is no longer submission. It's sovereignty. You see, your transformation becomes a mirror. Not the kind that flatters, but the kind that reflects truth. And when others look at you, they see all the places in themselves where they've stayed stagnant. They see the dreams they didn't chase, the boundaries they didn't enforce, the peace they never prioritized. Your growth, your discipline, your focus, your detachment becomes a confrontation. Not because you intended it that way, but because your evolution demands it. And here's the paradox. The more you focus on yourself, the less you need from others. But the less you need from them, the more they feel the absence of their control. They no longer get to define you. They no longer get to access you whenever they choose. That makes your presence rarer, and with rarity comes value. Not performative value, but intrinsic worth. Something they can't manipulate or diminish. This is the shock. They expect you to be the same, to still argue, still explain, still beg to be understood. But you don't. Because now your energy has direction, your time has purpose. Your words are intentional. You don't move to be seen. You move because you're alive. You don't speak to defend. You speak when it adds value. You don't show up to please. You show up as yourself, without apology. And the ones who were attached to your old self will struggle. Not because you did anything wrong, but because they're witnessing the death of a version of you they depended on. That version made their ego feel safe. That version kept the dynamic familiar. But you're no longer interested in repeating cycles. You're here to evolve. This kind of focus creates distance. Not just from people, but from patterns. You'll start to notice how much noise you used to tolerate, how much energy you used to give away. You'll begin to move differently, not out of anger, but out of clarity. You'll say less, but feel more. You'll engage less, but connect deeper. And in that stillness, your life begins to change. People will ask, what happened? Why you're so quiet? Why you're not as available as you used to be? And the truth is, nothing happened. You simply woke up. You realize that your energy is sacred. Your time is limited. Your attention is currency. And you're no longer willing to spend it carelessly. So let them be shocked. Let them wonder how you transformed in silence. Let them question your peace, your distance, your focus. You don't owe them an explanation. Your evolution is the answer. Your presence is the proof. You're not here to prove anyone wrong. You're here to become so right with yourself that no outside opinion can shake you. And when they see you again, calmer, clearer, and stronger, they'll realize the truth. You didn't change for them. You changed for you. And that's what shook them most. When you begin to truly focus on yourself, something unexpected starts to happen. You become a mirror. Not the kind that flatters, not the kind that comforts, but the kind that reveals. Your presence alone begins to reflect back the truth people are often unwilling to face within themselves. And this is where things get uncomfortable. Not for you, but for them. You're not doing anything outwardly aggressive. You're not pointing fingers or calling people out. You're simply existing in your growth, living in your authenticity, showing up without needing to explain, perform, or impress. And somehow that triggers others. Not because you've done something wrong, but because your existence challenges their illusions. You see, most people walk around with unhealed wounds they've never acknowledged. They cope with distractions, cover themselves in noise, and seek validation to avoid the silence. But when they encounter someone who no longer plays those games, someone who is quiet, grounded, and self-aware, it disturbs them. Not because you harmed them, but because you unknowingly force them to confront themselves. Your self-discipline reflects their lack of it. Your calmness exposes their chaos. Your boundaries highlight their dependence. Your silence makes them realize how addicted they are to being heard. They don't like it, not because of you, but because of what they see in you. Your growth becomes their discomfort. Your evolution becomes their comparison. And instead of celebrating your shift, many will try to question it, mock it, or challenge it. Not to understand, but to protect their own fragile self-concept. This is the nature of becoming a mirror. You're not here to hurt anyone. You're just not dimming your light anymore. And the brighter you become, the more the shadows around you start to dance. People feel that. They sense it in your detachment, your lack of urgency, your refusal to chase or explain. It confuses them, it intimidates them, because it reminds them that they too could choose a different path, but haven't. You start to see how uncomfortable authenticity makes people, how silence can be louder than 1,000 explanations, how your refusal to participate in drama, gossip, or shallow validation makes you stand out without saying a word. And as you continue to pull inward, to center yourself in your own purpose and peace, their reactions begin to speak louder than any words could. Some will say you've changed. Others will say you think you're better than them. A few may try to pull you back into old versions of yourself. Don't let them. Not because you're above them, but because you've simply moved beyond what you once accepted. It's not arrogance. That's evolution. That's self-respect. And what's powerful is this: you don't have to argue anymore. You don't have to prove or defend or retaliate. Just keep showing up as yourself. Quietly, consistently, fully. And with every breath, you continue to reflect the parts of people they'd rather avoid. That's the shock. That's the resistance. That's the awakening you cause, just by being who you are. This is why solitude becomes sacred during growth. Not because you don't love others, but because you begin to see how few can handle the version of you that doesn't shrink, doesn't chase, doesn't compromise your peace for belonging. You realize that being a mirror is not always easy. It can be lonely. It can create distance. But that distance is often necessary for both sides to evolve. And here's the truth. The ones who are ready will lean in. They'll be inspired, not intimidated. They'll rise, not retreat. They'll see you clearly and thank you silently for showing them what's possible. So don't fear being the mirror. Let your life reflect your growth. Let your silence echo louder than opinions. Let your focus disturb the noise. Because you're not here to fix others. You're here to free yourself. And in doing so, you'll wake others up, not by force, but by example. Be the mirror. even if it makes them uncomfortable, especially then, because discomfort is the first step to awareness, and awareness, that's where transformation begins. There comes a point in your journey where you realize that not everything demands a response. Not every insult deserves your energy. Not every misunderstanding needs your clarification. And not every person is worthy of your time. This is the moment when your silence becomes your power. When you begin to observe more and react less, you shift from being emotionally controlled to becoming emotionally sovereign. And in that space, between impulse and discipline, you discover a version of yourself that is untouchable. Most people are addicted to reaction. They react to opinions, gossip, judgment, chaos. They speak to defend, argue to be right, and exhaust themselves trying to control how others see them. If they listen to themselves, you're faint. If you're faint, life wouldn't. But reaction is a trap. It steals your focus, drains your energy, and keeps you locked in cycles that delay your growth. The more you react, the more you hand over control. You become predictable, easily provoked, easily manipulated. Your peace becomes fragile. But the moment you decide to stop feeding the noise, to stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you, something begins to shift. You reclaim your energy. You start directing it toward your goals, your healing, your evolution. You realize that silence is not weakness. It's refinement. It's the ability to sit with discomfort, to resist the urge to prove, and to rise above the low vibrations that once pulled you in. You begin to understand that presence speaks louder than words, that growth doesn't require an announcement, that healing doesn't demand attention. The most profound changes happen quietly. When you stop talking about what you're going to do and just do it. When you stop needing recognition for your growth, and instead let your new energy speak on your behalf, in this stillness you find clarity. You become more intentional with your time, more selective with your circle, and more focused on your path. And because you're no longer reacting, your emotions stop controlling you. You stop overthinking, over-explaining, and overextending. You become centered, calm, collected. That calmness, that unshakable presence, it unsettles people. They're used to the version of you who overgave, who responded to every slight, who tried to keep the peace at your own expense. But that version no longer exists. You've outgrown the need to be understood. You've released the pressure to always respond. Now your silence speaks volumes. It says, I am no longer available for drama. I'm building something too valuable to be distracted. The more you focus inward, the more obvious the distractions become. You see clearly who drains you, who supports you, who inspires you. And with that clarity, you start cutting cords. Not out of malice, out of self-respect. You understand that not everyone deserves a seat at your table. Some people only come to disrupt your peace and feed off your reaction. But when you offer them nothing, no energy, no argument, no explanation, they are left with only themselves. And that is the shock. You stop trying to win battles that don't matter. You stop trying to change people who aren't willing to grow. You stop engaging in conversations that go in circles. Instead, you focus, you create, you evolve, quietly, consistently, powerfully. And as you rise, not everyone will understand how you got there. They won't remember your struggle because you didn't broadcast it. They won't see the discipline behind your transformation because it happened in silence. That's the beauty of it. You don't need to be loud to be powerful. You don't need to be seen to be impactful. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. Your focus is your force. Your restraint is your rebellion. Your silence is your strength. Stop reacting to every noise that tries to pull you off course. Not everyone deserves a response. Not every moment is worth your attention. Hold your energy like it's sacred, because it is. Protect it. Guard it. Channel it toward becoming the person you were always meant to be. And when they wonder how you got there, how you became so grounded, so clear, so elevated, you won't need to say a word. They'll feel it. They'll see it. Your presence will be the message. Let them talk. Let them assume. Let them provoke. You just stay focused. Because in a world that thrives on noise, your silence will always be the loudest thing in the room. And now you see this journey was never about them. It was never about proving your worth, chasing applause, or convincing anyone to see your value. It was about returning to yourself, about realizing that your focus is sacred, your energy is finite, and your peace is worth more than anyone's opinion. You weren't meant to be loud. You were meant to be clear. You weren't meant to be seen by everyone. You were meant to be felt by the right ones. And you weren't meant to impress the world. You were meant to transform in silence. So focus, not to seek revenge, but to find freedom. Not to shock them with ego, but to surprise them with evolution. Let them misunderstand, doubt, or even forget you. And thank you very much. Who forget you? Because one day, when you rise from your solitude, quiet, powerful, unbothered, they won't just notice. They'll remember that you disappeared and came back as someone they never saw coming.